Have you ever looked at the news and just wondered, how on earth can some governments push through massive changes in a flash, while others seem to get stuck debating the same thing for years and years? Well, today, we're going to pop the hood on the machinery of government and see what really makes it tick.
I mean, the difference can be absolutely staggering, right? You see one country completely transform its national healthcare system, and it seems to happen almost instantly. Meanwhile, another country can spend an entire decade locked in battle just to pass a single, similar bill. So, what's really going on there? What explains that huge gap in speed and power?
It's easy to think the answer is just about politics, which party's in power. But that's not the whole story, not even close. The real secret lies in the very blueprint of the government itself. It's about the rules, the structure, the nuts and bolts that turn an idea into law.
Okay, so to really get a grip on this, you can start by looking at just two core features of any government. Think of these as the master keys that unlock our understanding of how much power a state really has, and, just as importantly, how well it can actually use it.
First up, we have autonomy. The best way to think about this is as the government's independence. A government with high autonomy is one that can stand up to powerful lobbyists and special interest groups. It can make decisions for the good of the entire country, not just for the benefit of a select few.
In the second key feature, that's capacity. Now, this is crucial. It's one thing to have the authority to act, but it's a whole other thing to have the ability to follow through. Does the government actually have the know-how, the money, and the organization to really get things done effectively?
So just picture two dials in your mind, one for autonomy and one for capacity. Where those dials are set for any given country tells you a tremendous amount about how its government really, truly works on the inside.
So, how does all this look in the real world? Well, first, let's think about geography. Is a government's power all packed into one central location, or is it spread out across the map?
This gives us two basic models. On one side, you have unitary systems. Here, the national central government is the boss. It holds the ultimate power. But on the other side, you've got federal systems, where power is split up by law between the national government and regional ones, like states or provinces. So for instance, the UK and France are classic unitary systems, and that design often lets them make policy in a much more direct way. But then you look at federal countries like the US, Canada, or India, and you see more layers, more negotiations, and frankly, a lot more potential for gridlock.
And this isn't just an abstract idea. It has a huge impact on people's lives. Take Canada's federal system. The national government in Ottawa might want to make a big change to healthcare, but it just can't snap its fingers and make it happen. It has to negotiate with every single province, because that's where the real power over healthcare actually is.
All right, so that's the where. Now let's get to our next big question, the who. We need to look at the people in charge. Are the folks who make the laws and the folks who carry them out basically on the same team, or are they kept separate on purpose?
This leads to another split. In a parliamentary system, the leader of the country, the prime minister, is actually a member of the legislature. Their powers are fused together. But in a presidential system, the president is elected totally separately from the legislature. This creates a real, you guessed it, separation of powers.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The United States, for example, combines both a federal structure and a presidential one. This entire system was designed with a deep fear of too much power in one place. And the result? It creates an incredible number of roadblocks and hurdles, making big, sweeping changes really, really difficult by design.
And you don't have to look far to see a perfect example of this. When President Obama was trying to pass major healthcare reform, the very design of the system created this incredibly long and difficult path. He had to win over a separate Congress and also deal with the powers of individual states. It was a marathon.
Okay, so we've looked at the big picture, the blueprints of the system. Now let's zoom in on the people inside the machine. Because within any of these systems, there are three key groups who are actually driving the policy process.
So who are they? You've got the executive, think presidents and prime ministers. You've got the legislature, the people who make the laws, like a parliament or Congress. And then you have the civil service, the permanent government workers who keep the whole thing running day to day.
Now, in most modern governments, let's be honest, the executive is really in the driver's seat. Prime ministers and presidents aren't just signing off on policy. More often than not, they are the ones kicking things off and setting the entire agenda for the nation.
And if you want to see just how concentrated that power can be, get this. In the UK's unitary parliamentary system, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher announced a massive review of the entire National Health Service,
live on TV. And she did it without even telling her own cabinet ministers first. I mean, that is a jaw-dropping display of executive power.
So, if the executive is doing all the driving, you might be asking, where does that leave the legislature? Well, in a lot of systems today, their role can feel a bit diminished. They're often seen less as the creators of policy and more as a group that just gives the final okay to decisions already made somewhere else.
But we can't forget that third, crucial actor, the civil service. These are the government officials who aren't elected. They have a totally different kind of power. It's a quiet power, but it's incredibly influential because it comes from decades of expertise and institutional knowledge.
And this quote just nails it. Politicians, they're temporary. They come and go with elections. But the bureaucracy, it's permanent. These civil servants provide the stability, the expertise, and the long-term memory of the government, which gives them a massive behind-the-scenes say in how policy gets shaped over the long haul.
So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, it's that there is no single perfect system. A unitary, parliamentary government might be super fast and decisive, but a federal, presidential one gives you more checks and balances, more representation for different regions. Every single design is just a different set of trade-offs between things like speed, stability, and making sure everyone's voice is heard.
And that brings us to a final question. For you, now that you have this toolkit for looking at how your own government is designed, really think about it. If you had the power to change just one single rule in your country's policymaking process to make it better, what would you change and why?